Luke, actually. I wasn't really paying attention. Okay, we're good. We're back online. So welcome back. Those joining, we're on our next agenda item, and Luke Hunter's just starting the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Adam. Yeah, so the buyback program is part of the Bill C-21. It's an act to make amendments to certain provisions of two acts, the firearms and the criminal code. So Bill C-31 was initially introduced in 2021 and reintroduced in May 30, 2022. So C-21 has received royal assent in December 15, 2023, and it's now the law. So what is it? So the Liberal government made those changes in response to the 2020 Nova Scotia attack, claiming 22 lives. And also the anti-gun lobby groups pressured the government to make those changes. We all agree that in principle, that any type of weapon, be it firearms, are inherently dangerous. There's no question about that. But there are law-abiding citizens, gun owners that utilize firearms for specific purpose, for example, hunting, sustenance, and also sports hunting, the hunting fraternity. Bill C-21 impacts treating Aboriginal rights, a constitutionally protected right. It will erode our rights. So what are these new restrictions? The regulations and also the criminal code provisions, new provisions, are very technical. We're not only talking about Bill C-21, there's also Bill C-71, the earlier version. So when you read those legislations, they're very confusing. And also the regulations themselves, some areas are not clear. So here are some of the changes, the impacts, the national handgun freeze. What this does is the handguns, even though handguns are not banned, totally banned, but they're restricted. You're prevented from selling or acquiring new or transferring handguns. So some of our citizens still own handguns. The other one is the red flag laws. What this does is it allows police agencies to temporarily remove high risk individuals. Third, it enhances the penalties for smuggling, prohibitions on certain types of what they refer to as ghosting guns. What that is the privately made handguns or rifles, and also you can download blueprints, 3D blueprints to make your own gun. So now it's illegal to print those documents. So once you print the document, you're breaking the law. And I guess the impact on the new assigned assault style weapons, the AR-15, M16, M4, and the Swiss firearm. A lot of our First Nations utilize these firearms for hunting. And the other one is a license revocation, meaning that they can remove your license if you're a high-risk individual involved in domestic violence or deals with criminal harassment. So some of the key concerns, I know I've been receiving phone calls from individuals from our First Nations, especially from the far north. I had a long discussions from a young man from Wabukwe, Fort Severn, and Pewanak. They have concerns related to the buyback program and also the prohibited new firearms. So the Bill C-31 is applied generally, meaning that it does not consider your your special rights under Section 35. And the other key concern is the high cost of replacing those firearms. Even though there's a buyback program, the buyback program is very short. It started in January 19 and it ends in a few days. I believe it's on March 31st. So a lot of our First Nations, they didn't receive a notice, especially in the remote north. Like Adam was saying, he received several emails. So I received several emails as well. So firearms are necessary for food harvesting, sustenance, because of the high cost of living in the far north or in the remote communities. So those are the concerns that I hear from the local harvesters. And also protection from the predators. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to limit your shots to 5. So what happens when you get attacked by 30 pack of wolves? You're so there's a high risk of being injured, and also large predators, polar bears and bears. They're because of the climate change, their behavior is changing, so they're coming to our communities, and they're subject to, I guess, the attacks. So those are the concerns that I hear from the communities. There's also the again, I spoke to the buyback program is too short, and also the amnesty period ends in October 30th, 2026. So there is no guarantee that you will get compensation, even if you submit a declaration. After October 2026, you are required to deactivate all banned firearms that you currently have or in your possession. If you don't, there's a risk of legal liability. So those are the concerns that I hear from our local harvesters, that they have serious concerns on Bill C-21, especially the buyback program. It ends in a few days, like I said, and how they're going to replace their firearms once they're being deemed to be banned. So the other areas that are, when I looked at the criminal code provisions yesterday, late last night, and some of the restrictions talks about the magazine clips. You can't have a magazine clip more than 5 rounds, and if you do, you have to you can't transfer it, or gun parts. Some gun parts are interchangeable, so you can't loan your magazines. So otherwise you face prosecution. And also they're prohibiting firearms entering into Canada that have more than 5 clip magazine. So the issue here is not so much as in terms of the it's the issue of buying guns that are made in the United States. A lot of the guns are made in the United States and other countries. To prohibit, because there is no law limiting in the US up to 5 rounds. So in Canada, this prohibits any firearm, any semi-automatic firearm from entering to Canada. So there are other technical. So Mike can touch on those issues, on some of the technical aspects of the bill. Mike.
Thanks, Luke, and thanks for asking me to present today. Mike Sherry. Yeah, there is a briefing note on this that in the package, Chief's package, starts at page 21, that has some of the more technical references, the section numbers and the regulation number, as Luke indicated. There's a couple of key dates that Luke referred to and also Adam referred to. So there is a voluntary return program that expires just in a few days from now, March 31st. So that's a voluntary program in terms of these prohibited, what called prohibited weapons, assault style firearms as defined, that there's an option to voluntarily return or declare and or permanently deactivate these weapons. And then there is some financial compensation available, but it's limited. There's a capped budget. And even within that capped budget, there's limitations on how much money would be provided for each weapon or ammunition. It's in a lot of cases, it's not replacement value. So even if someone decided to participate in this program, there's no guarantee of compensation, and there's no guarantee that even if you got compensation, that it would be enough to replace the weapon with another similar weapon. So that day is just a few days from now, so it's going to be difficult for people who haven't applied already to meet it, but it still is open technically. It is voluntary, so there's no criminal liability attached to missing that particular date. So if you have received emails or whatever it is, I mean, it's something to pay attention to for sure. But if you decide not to participate in this compensation program within the next few days, that does not entail criminal. It doesn't open you up to criminal liability. So there's that important reference for that date. But the other date that's been mentioned is more serious in terms of criminal liability for prohibited weapons, and that's October 30th of this year. And there's been several two or three amnesties that have been extended for various political and other reasons. But the government has been saying that this is the last one, that they intend to fully enforce the law that's been on the books for several years as of October 30th. And so that's something definitely to take into account because it's the offense is the mainline offense here. Possession and use of a prohibited weapon is a very serious offense. It's a so-called indictable offense, and the maximum penalty is 10 years in jail. And that can actually be increased if other factors are in place, depending how the weapon is used and the circumstances. So that's definitely a date to keep in mind if the government doesn't change its mind about the extending the amnesty. Now, there has been a very recent development that should be taken into account that may affect the amnesty date, but we don't know for sure. It just literally at the end of last week, the Supreme Court of Canada decided to gave leave to appeal a case brought by non-First Nation parties about these prohibited weapons in particular. So the case was it's two or three cases combined. But it was the main case was brought by a gun rights association, coalition of Canadian firearms owners or something like that. And so they brought these cases forward. They lost at the federal court levels, but the Supreme Court of Canada agreed on Thursday or Friday to accept leave to appeal. And that means they are going to hear the appeal. There's no schedule yet. It always takes many months to hear the actual appeal. And we have to do some double checking on exactly what the issues are raised in that appeal. But at first check, it doesn't seem that the issues raised relate specifically to First Nation rights. It's more of a gun owner, a sort of non-First Nation gun owner approach. They've raised issues around property rights, and they've also raised very technical arguments around delegation and subdelegation. It has to do with the fact that there's the law that Luke referred to, but there's a regulation, but there's also the cabinet through orders and council, the cabinet orders have added certain guns to the list. And I guess the argument that this group is making, which is that it's along the lines that the cabinet has acted beyond its authority and that the subdelegation has not been authorized by Parliament. So they're challenging it on that very technical basis. And it could be that that's what the Supreme Court is interested in. So we are going to take a closer look at it because there may be an opening there to possibly consider an intervention from NAN First Nations or others to raise First Nation issues. But it remains to be seen because if the case has been shaped in a certain way, we would be stuck with factual record, and it's difficult at that stage to raise brand new issues. But we're going to take a look at it to see if that is a possibility. But even if the case doesn't really deal with First Nation issues, it's because the Supreme Court has accepted leave to appeal. It does raise the possibility that the the amnesty in October will be extended because the case will still be before the Supreme Court. And the gun owners group has already indicated that they would bring a motion to seek an injunction to delay the enforcement of the prohibited weapons regulations. And it makes sense because what the government is saying is that by October 30th, all these guns have to be deactivated or returned. So if that actually happens, what happens if the Supreme Court afterwards decides that the law is not valid? Then do these guns all have to be returned? So I think they probably have a pretty reasonable basis to argue that that amnesty would have to be extended. But so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. And of course, a key role for Anishinaabe will be to share information on this kind of thing going forward. There's not much of a window for the compensation over the next few days, but definitely NAN can share information on as the October 30th date approaches and what the options are. In terms of First Nation rights, the original legislation did include one of these non-derogation clauses that talks about First Nation rights not being derogated against or prejudiced, but those are very standard and they don't really have a lot of substance. And in fact, the Interpretation Act has been amended in the last year or so to say that all federal statutes essentially a non-derogation right is read into those. It's really, those kind of clauses don't have a lot of substantive impact. It's most important to just think in terms of the actual rights that are protected by Section 35 and other constitutional provisions. So those are mostly in the case of treaties 5 and 9, it's treaty rights. So of course there is the harvesting clause in the treaty, which is a constitutionally protected right, and that does include the use of firearms in a safe way. So in terms of a challenge to this, the implementation of this legislation based on treaty rights, it would be possible to have a general challenge raised by First Nations. I'm not sure what Anishinaabe possibly, but it would be possible to do it on a collective basis. It's also possible to do it on a case-by-case basis so that in the future, say the October 30th date actually is implemented and people are charged, unfortunately, individuals can raise the treaty as a defense against charges under this legislation. But that puts a lot of pressure on individuals because in terms of legal costs and just the pressure of being charged under the criminal code and all that entails for the individual and the family. And also, of course, there's no guarantee that a treaty right defense in an individual case would be successful. So if it's not successful, an individual in that sort of situation would be subject to getting a criminal record and possibly going to jail for quite a long time. So that puts tremendous pressure on the individuals involved. And, in this area, because of some of the factors that Luke has mentioned, the results are not guaranteed. Yes, there is the treaty right to harvest, and that implies incidental things like weapons. But the way the courts generally handle these cases is that they balance treaty right like this against, say, public safety. So it would depend on circumstances like how the gun was used, whether it had been traditionally used, and also the nature of the gun. Like if it's one of these assault type weapons, not that anybody would do that, but if it was one of these assault type weapons that are common in the United States, it wouldn't be surprising for a court to determine that public safety takes precedent in a situation like that. The briefing note recommends certain steps that can be taken, some of which I've touched on, and so it's subject to talking with the Grand Chief and others. We could bring forward a resolution that provides a mandate for NAN working with First Nations to work on some of these options. For example, an extension of the compensation program. Just basically a complete exemption for First Nations, or at least a partial exemption for certain First Nation uses of weapons, and exploration of a legal challenge. So those are the steps that we've laid out there. And also, of course, constant communication, as there is the possibility in the worst case scenario that the Supreme Court case would not lead to a further amnesty, and that the October 30th would be a real date that people would have to deal with in terms of their lives. Thank you. We're glad to take any questions or comments.
Wache, please state your name and nation.
Chief Sonny Batiste from Attachment Nation. Yeah, you had just mentioned, possibility of putting in a resolution, for NAN and to look more into this, because again, they're starting to take our rights away. We all live off the land. I mean, we've got to protect our rights as well too. And I can understand about, bigger guns, but I don't think our people really use. I think the highest caliber most probably uses 300 Magnum. I mean, it's they don't use them machine guns to go out hunting. But I think NAN should get more involved and do all the research, under the Constitution or rights to bear arms, and and bring that back to us guys. It's only a thought, but I think we should prepare ourselves for that. Yeah.
Okay, good. I apologize. I'm still learning the names here. There's a lot of new faces for me. I've only done the Mushkegowuk Council meetings. I believe that I skipped over Chief Russell Wesley, who had a comment. I apologize. Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, it was just a note to the assembly that there's already a resolution at the AFN 39/2022 in opposition to the Bill C-21. There was a number of therefores in there, and I think 6 bullet items that addresses all the issues that you're raising. And since then, Kuchijing and Cat Lake has not received a report back from the AFN on this particular matter, including what we're now dealing with. So I don't know whether we need to do another resolution other than I honestly don't know what to think. But there is already a resolution in regards to this. Maybe what we could do is reaffirm here at NAN that particular resolution. But I don't know.
Miigwech, Jennifer, please state your name and nation for the record.
Chief Jennifer Constant from Matagami First Nation. I just have a question, and maybe this is, I guess, to either Luke or Mike. Has there been any kind of promotion of this through NAN of, what's happening, or is that just left to the general kind of, updates that are on the news or whatnot? And then the second part would be, if not, can you do something just to show that the chiefs do have this on their radar and are looking to actively help support or inform our members so that they don't run the risk of these type of charges. It's already hard enough for them when they get challenged when they're out on the land, exercising their rights. This is just an added layer of risk to them that they shouldn't have to be exposed to.
Yeah, I think the answer is no. The firearms, like Bill C-31, is just supplied generally. So there's nothing that, yeah, certainly we haven't done anything else in terms of the promotion, but there is, I know this issue it's happening on the ground. I know there was a lady that talked about the firearms issues on one of our meetings a couple weeks ago, and her harassment related to COs related to firearms regulations. So we are aware of those issues, and so yeah, certainly part of the recommendation is to have that education campaign. So we will look into the education campaign. That's in terms of the deadline, October 30th. That's another key, I guess, date is October 30th. If it's not extended, then that's another key date where we need to focus to tell our members that we need to be careful with your firearms and devices. Otherwise, you're at risk of liability. Yeah, thanks for that question.
Miigwech, Chief Sunny, please.
Yeah, I would like to say just one more comment about what Russell was saying about the AFN and the resolution. I think NAN should, do it ourselves because at least we know what's going on. Because me, myself, I don't got no faith in the AFN on any kind of resolutions. Thank you.
Miigwech, are there any more questions or comments at this time? Okay, Egrede. We're going to be continuing forwards with the agenda, which is Bill 5 and unmarked graves in NAN territory. And it will be continued by Luke Hunter and Mike Sherry.
Okay, thank you. Just quickly, I know we're running out of time. The other issue that came up last year, or is it just recently, is the issue of it deals with the issue of unmarked graves in NAN territory. This is not related to Indian Western School. This is related to unmarked graves in the I guess the need to protect unmarked graves, historical graves in our I guess territory, because we have grave sites along our river systems and also places where we lived historically. So some First Nations have not completed their, I guess, their identification, also marking historical graves. And why that issue has come up is the Bill 5. Because under the Bill 5, province can suspend certain provisions of certain acts. This will possibly include historical sites, First Nation sites, and also grave sites. So that issue has come up, and also the lack of funding. So First Nations need funding to do this work, and there is no funding for it. So although First Nations have that inherent right to, under the Treaty on Aboriginal Rights, we have the inherent laws to protect our historical sites. But again, those can be overridden if we don't mark them, and also if we don't put our laws into effect. So so that's the issue about the unmarked graves in NAN territory. So I'll let Mike go briefly on the legal aspects of the what possible protections can be there. There are protections, so Mike will explain a little bit of that.
Thanks, Luke, and thanks again. The briefing note here is starting on page 23 of the Chief's book for technical references. So just pulling away from Bill 5 for a sec, the main piece of provincial legislation that applies here, and it's pretty well strictly provincial, is the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act. And it has, of course, an acronym. And it has a mandatory process when a so-called unmarked grave is discovered through construction or other circumstances. So there is a process that has to be followed. There's a discovery protocol. Provincial officials get involved. Police and coroner are contacted, and the nearby First Nations are contacted. There's some questions there about the level of discretion of the provincial officials to make these kinds of decisions as to what is, say, an unmarked grave and which First Nation should be contacted. So that's a bit of a question mark under the current procedure. And then when people do get together, there's a requirement of a site disposition agreement, which can have various outcomes, leaving things as they are, or possibly reinterment, working with the First Nation. And if the parties cannot agree, there's a provision for binding arbitration, which it can be expensive, but it is a good option if the province is not being reasonable. So the basic system is that's the basic system that's in place. There is some protections for First Nations there, but it's not a perfect system by any means. The other piece of legislation that comes into play is the Ontario Heritage Act, but it's that funeral burial piece of legislation that's the most relevant. So, as Luke mentioned, the question that's arisen is because of Bill 5, the one that was passed last June. So the Bill 5 has various schedules. It does include some amendments to the Ontario Heritage Act, but those don't appear to be relevant because they deal with artifacts and things mostly in a municipal infrastructure setting, like homes and streets and things. So that doesn't seem to be the relevant concern. The concern, as Luke noted, is the so-called Special Economic Zones Act, which is a new piece of legislation, very short, that was a schedule to Bill 5, and that's the one that everyone knows about. This is the power of the province, the cabinet, to designate a special economic zone, map it out, and then they have the power within that zone to choose designated projects, designated proponents, and also within that zone, the cabinet, not the legislature, but the cabinet, and in some cases the minister, can override any piece of provincial or legislation or municipal legislation. So obviously the concern is that in it hasn't happened yet, but the concern is quite clear and valid, is that in a situation where the province is rushing ahead as much as possible for a mine or something like that, is that they'll skip over the normal protections for unmarked graves and then do some pretty, awful things potentially, all in the interest of rushing towards development. So it is a serious risk. It is there open legally. There are a couple of things, is that there really are no protective references to First Nations in the actual Special Economic Zones Act, but they have passed after June, they passed a regulation with the numbers in the briefing note that does provide some more detail on how a zone is chosen, how a preferred proponent is chosen. And in that regulation, there are some references to First Nation engagement. So that are better than what's in the actual act. For example, there has to be proof that these designations within a special economic zone are beneficial to First Nations, at least in part. So if First Nation or group of First Nations are working with NAN or tribal councils in the future run into a kind of situation like this where a special economic zone is about to be declared or has been declared, and there's a concern around traditional graves, the regulation can be used to put pressure on the province and slow them down, and that could be through negotiations and also ultimately court if negotiations are not successful. So there is a new weapon through the regulation that can be used against the concern here. In terms of these special economic zones, in spite of all the panic and rush last year, the fact is that up until more or less yesterday, that the province has not designated a single zone, even though they signaled very broadly that they did make it a secret that they were thinking about the Ring of Fire area in particular. But you may have caught, especially since you're down in Toronto, that you may have caught in the media yesterday that the first special economic zone will be, if this is not a joke, is going to be the Billy Bishop Airport, which is just a few kilometers from here. So that they're going to use the power under the legislation to basically ram stuff through the Billy Bishop Airport, including in particular jet travel. So there hasn't been a particular a zone declared in Anishinaabe territory, and at least in terms of the Ring of Fire negotiations on permanent roads, it seems like the province has been able to work out arrangements with some, perhaps not all, the First Nations, and the province has declared that they prefer that model. Although I do take into account Amy Westland's comments from just about it earlier this afternoon about the fact that one has to be careful about those kinds of partnerships because the province may be trying to build up a record to defend a future special economic zone. So, but there is an opportunity right now to deal with this concern in a preemptive way. So not wait for a situation where there's a disaster pending, so that because this concern has been identified, but the province doesn't seem to be on the point of declaring a zone up in Anishinaabe territory. So it's a relatively good time to raise the issue and try to seek commitments and assurances, possibly even statutory amendments that would prevent impacts on traditional graves in special economic zones. And in a situation where it's not super pressurized because the zone has not been declared yet. And it's, as has been made clear, this is different from the residential school situation. These are traditional graves in traditional territory. I guess just quickly, the other reason why there's an opportunity right now for maybe something preemptive and not in a totally pressurized environment like we had last year is that there's a little bit less pressure in terms of the tariffs and all the Trump nonsense for various political reasons, including the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States down there invalidated a lot of his tariffs. So there's less pressure now. So on this particular issue of graves, there seems to be a bit of an opportunity that to clarify things and prevent future, disgraceful conduct in relation to traditional graves. So that's about it. Glad to take any questions. Thank you.
Yes, please state your name and First Nation.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Rodney Howe, proxy for Poplar Hill First Nation. Many chiefs probably don't know, but Poplar Hill First Nation had a residential school right across the lake from their First Nation. And that area is deemed a historical site because it's one of the listed residential schools in Canada. Our First Nation is accessing money through INAC. And part of that process includes a drone that we are going to be using. We recognize that probably there was nobody that passed away in that at that residential school site, but part of the funding allows us to buy a drone. I've been asked to go across the hallway to speak later on to let the communities know what we're trying to do with that particular residential school site. You may wonder where I'm going. First of all, I want to say something that Frank said. Why did you bring up Trump to begin with in your comments? What we are planning to do, and this is something I suggested to Poplar Hill First Nation. I was there 7 years as a kid, and I remember working in the garden along the Barrens River. And the Barrens River runs just east of Bekanchkum all the way through Poplar Hill all the way into the Manitoba lakes. I remember as a kid working in the garden, finding bones, artifacts, and so forth. And we know along that river, there are historical sites, burial grounds. In fact, this past year, Poplar Hill First Nation buried their elder where he wanted to be buried now was among his ancestors along the river system there. We are hoping to use, and I suggested to the First Nation to use this drone to identify missing or bodies buried along the river system where perhaps we know there was historical campsites and burial grounds. When I'm reading this report, I also recognize now more than ever, if we do find a historical site, burial ground of our people from hundreds of years ago, we would have to notify Ontario. And that's an ongoing issue. We recognize Ontario's landing, mining claims out to people left and right without our knowledge in our territory. And it's sad for me that we have to notify the province when we, as a community, find a historical site of our people. Obviously, we want to protect that area, but at the same time, I would challenge the First Nations, if you have access to a drone, use it that way. I recognize the government is wanting us to map wherever our people travel. I'm from Lac Seul First Nation, and we've done the same thing with our lake, is identified where did our people live, where did we have burial grounds. So I'm glad for the technology. We're hoping to use it that way. It's just a comment, not really a question.
Miigwech, for your comment and the importance of utilizing drones to find our sacred sites to protect against mining claims. Miigwech. Are there any further comments or questions from the delegates? Yes, please go ahead. And please state your name and First Nation. I'm still putting faces to names, Miigwech.
Chief Merle in Mushkegowuk First Nation.
Could you move closer to the mic, please? Miigwech.
Good. Hello. Good. So Chief Merle in Mushkegowuk First Nation. I just wanted to add further to Rodney's comments regarding burial sites in our old traditional grounds. There has to be a point where we are sovereign in that we don't release some of this information to the government either. I mean, fine and dandy, they're going to fund or have legislated laws to say that we need to advise the governments of where some of our traditional areas are. To me personally, we shouldn't. There's nothing saying that we have to share that information with the government because we all know that they're going to use it against us. Plain and simple. That's what they're going to do. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Miigwech, for your comment on the importance of keeping our ancestral sites sacred and secret and trying to find balance. Yes, Jennifer, please go ahead and please state your name and nation again. Miigwech.
Chief Jennifer Constant from Matagami First Nation. So just to echo some of the comments from the fellow chiefs here, you know, Matagami has known grave sites and our members do not want to have those known. We have records of them being like pillaged in the past and even plans of people doing that. And we have that on record. So our members are very anxious about providing any info. The other thing that we need to kind of look at, Matagami has right in our territory a project that is designated as the 1P1P. And, you know, my own opinion is that these designations are just a lot of political flexing or bolstering, whatever you want to call it. How that actually works out when they start applying the duty to consult is really going to be testing what that is. But yeah, it's putting a lot of our First Nations in a really difficult predicament. We do have values identified, but we've been advised that we should be designating things as cemeteries for these old grave sites so that they're protected. But you're providing the information directly to the people who are looking to exploit our territory. So I just wanted to echo that, that it might be difficult for us to navigate this as individual nations. So, Miigwech.
Miigwech, for your comments. I'm hearing generally that there's a sense of need for further protection. Yes, please go ahead. Please state your name and your nation.
Wadje. Matthias Anderson, Dishnikaz, Kaswanka Lake First Nation. Chief Matthias. I wanted to speak about we have a mineral company that's pretty much outside my community, reserve lines. And they have mining stakes right in the middle of our old settlement. And across our traditional territory, there are marked grave sites there and most likely unmarked grave sites across the Shibagama Lake. And there's a couple companies that are trying to get in touch with me, and I'm not entirely sure how to open up that discussions right now. It's my first month in as chief. Yeah, I'm gonna need help with from NAN. I recall former Chief Tom from Casablanca sent a letter to MNR. I'm not exactly what he shared with MNR regarding the mineral claims. that he I wish he shared it with me. I'm still and still in transition with the administration there. But yeah, I just wanted to express the concern I have with Casablanca Lake, Kenorland Mining Company. They're doing exploration right now, I believe. They're having their helicopters flying about. Miigwech.
All right, Miigwech, thank you again. I am really gathering that there's a need for protection and guidance for the First Nations from NAN. If there are no more questions or comments at this time, we'll be continuing forwards. And I'm sure that as individual First Nations, you can approach Mike Sherry and Luke Hunter during this conference. Oh, wait, sorry, my bad. Okay, go ahead. I was rushing you.
Okay, bonjour, Chief Kuzis from Neskantaga First Nation. Yeah, talking about this unmarked graves. I just want to share something. We got a project that's happening right now. It's been an ongoing project for the last 6 or 7 years. And the contractor had a bad experience. I think they hit something along the line where the fiber optic, now they're having really hard time to continue their work. So that's why it's so important when First Nation says there's a lot of sacred areas, and a lot of it in our generation we don't know, because our ancestors were the ones that knew where the sacred areas are, and a lot of it is from the Creator. The Creator gave us some sacred areas where people supposed not go and touch and disturb. And I think that's one of the things what happened with this company in my community. There are 5 communities that are trying to get hooked up with fiber optic. So it's very disturbing what happened to them. And we do have rivers that are very that were used with our ancestors. And there are lots of burial sites because they're not marked. Wherever people reside, that's where when they lose a loved one, that's where it was people buried. How are we going to protect these? There's a lot of things we have to do, a lot of research, and it's very, because it will impact us if these things are disturbed. And that's what we experienced with that fiber optic. They did cross the lake to Adwabscut, and they were heading to Webiko and Summer Beaver. So hopefully the project will continue. It's because we're not utilized. Elders are not utilized. It's by engineering stuff, and they don't know these things, sacred areas. That's why Anishinaabe is very, very important to get that knowledge, to share that knowledge. But we're just not utilized, and we don't listen to each other when we say things. So there is lot of this unmarked graves. We all survive from the land. I'm sure every family bury a loved one in the land where it's not marked. Today we make a square box, or have a cemetery. That's today's world. But the world where our ancestors, the way they lived, they were on their own family and buried their loved one anywhere they lost one. So I just wanted to share that. So miigwech.
Miigwech, thank you for bringing that to the attention of the tension between having sacred land, sacred rivers, and building infrastructure, like you were saying, with the fiber optics and the potential disruption of graves. And yes, you are so right. Like, it is very necessary to be working with, consulting our elders, and taking into account their spiritual knowledge, because I think everyone here wants to honor their ancestors. Are there any further questions or comments from the delegates? Would you, what's his name? Mike? Would you like to respond to anything, Mike, before we
No,
continue
no,
forward?
Good, thank you.
Okay, all right, Miigwech. Thank you very much, Mike and Luke, for your presentation. We're going to be continuing forwards with are we going to continue forward? Yeah? We're going to break? Okay, actually, we're not going to continue forwards. We're actually going to have a break for about 10 minutes, okay? So 10 minutes, please. We'll reconvene again to continue. Miigwech. next 2 minutes. So please take a seat once more, and I'll be calling the meeting back to order in the next 2 minutes. Miigwech. All right. Are you ready to go? Yeah, you ready to go?
We gotta keep going, right?
Yeah, I gotta keep going. All right, miigwech, everybody. Thank you for taking the opportunity to take care of yourself with a quick break. I'm going to be calling the meeting back to order, please. So if you need to talk to one another, please continue your conversations out in the hall. We're most likely going to be going over time today. Anyways, we're going to be continuing with the comprehensive review of NAN governance and management structure and the development of sovereign and incorporated entities. I will be inviting up Gary Dokis to continue onwards. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Niabin. Good afternoon, everybody. As you're aware, there was a request for a comprehensive review, and that process has been going on for about the last 2 months now. So this afternoon, during the time we have 3 Paces here, the company that's working on the review, and I have sent you out, I think, requests a couple of times in the last 3 weeks or so to register with them because it's so important to hear from the chiefs on this comprehensive review. So 3 Paces is here for the 3 days this week and has the room available for meeting with anybody to give them some feedback. Also today, we'd like to call on Chief Wabwas, who was the seconder of that resolution, to talk a little bit about the resolution. And then after that, we're going to call on Ogimikwe Constant and Ogimikwe Taylor to speak. They're both members of the Finance and Governance Committee. And then after that, we have 3 Paces going to do a brief presentation and introduce themselves. So to start it off, I'd like to call on Chief Wabas to talk about the resolution that he seconded last year.
Waje, bonjour. Ogma kana go to guy out to go sing a go in the Yokuma. Pizza, President. Oh, sage to go next. I just know, say, it's in I don't know. 15 minutes, Gaga could not be 1 hour and ace. You're going to have no mass. Hey, amigos, way he got what you got there. We're going to the management or the team is going to update the current work that's been in place. It's to review Anishinaabe Nation organization. Okay. The project has started, which is good. Which is good. We're going to look at the operation of Anishinaabe Nation. Okay, the way it's structured. We're going to look at those, and we're going to be interviewing, the management, and hopefully the staff could also be interviewed as well. Look at the from the time we started the Grand Council 3D number 9, back in the 70s to now of where we are. We're going to have that information, like just an overview, kind of a history, and and it's going to be reported that this is what the Snabieskin Nation is. Okay. We talk about the original mandate of the Snabieskin Nation, original intent. It has evolved over time, maybe many times, to what it is now. And in our discussions, we talked about the maybe there should be a better way of organizing ourselves. With our management and also with our advocacy efforts, lobbying efforts, and dealing with the treaty, dealing with the treaty. At what capacity, at what role, that kind of thing. Like the original intent, the way I understood it was based on the treaty, yeah, of the Snabieskin Nation, and it has evolved to what it is today now, getting to be a big organization, I think, which is good. On the resolution 2519, I was I a seconder? Yeah, I seconded this resolution. Okay, we've stated that therefore be resolved that NAN Chiefs and Assembly authorize and mandate a comprehensive governance and management structure review of Nishnawbe Nation to be undertaken through an independent and neutral entity with input from experienced officials from tribal councils and other non-related organizations under formal terms of reference approved by the Chiefs Committee on Governance. Okay. Be it further resolved, the scope of work was highlighted here. Full assessment of NAN's current governance and management systems, mandates, policies, and internal structure, including NAN Executive Council, Code of Conduct, and the Executive Oaths of Office. Okay. It's a full assessment, full review of what the NAN's current governance and management systems are, including mandates and policies, the structures. Okay. And we'll do a research and legal analysis on how NAN can operate as a sovereign indigenous governance entity outside of federal and provincial corporate legislation. I talked about this this morning. And Snabi Ogmaun. Ane Snakia and Snabi Ogmaun. Gimi na nod and sin Manitoga gimi na gotchen. A king does yet and sin no ma. Ego the snogum. How do you document that? How do you present that? You and Snabi Ogmaun away from colonial systems. Miyadukan, research and legal analysis on how NAN can operate as a sovereign indigenous governance entity. That would be the one part of the structure. The other one is the development of a culturally grounded indigenous law-based governance entity from which the Grand Chief and Deputy Grand Chiefs will be governed under the First Nation laws, policies, and protocols. Okay. So, indigenous law-based governance entity, we would have to draft the people or the chiefs would have to draft these laws. Okay. the exploration of federally provincial incorporated services entities in order to function with some programs and services. We'll look at how we're going to structure our our programs and services that are funded by Canada and Ontario. It's almost like you'll have these funding agreements with Canada under their law, and there will be a separate entity that we can look at as Ansnabe Hogma so something like that. That's what I would like to see. Yeah, Dokan. Yeah, Jigi. That's why I supported this. We're going to review and assess these things, explore. Okay, the exploration of federally, I just mentioned that. A review of NAN's current electoral policy and process, development of options for a custom indigenous electoral system, including mechanisms to align or operate independently of provincial and federal legislation. Meaning that we're going to look at how we're going to elect the executive. We'll look at those options. Is it going to be the people that will elect the executive, or is it through the chiefs that will elect? Okay. When you empower, like when people elect leaders, they empower them. They empower them to be their spokesman or to be their advocate, political leaders, to make and draft laws. So in a way, we can look at how much power do we want to give to the executive? That is it going to come from the people? Is it going to come from the chiefs? Yeah. We need to look at those things. Yeah. We need to look at those things. Yeah. And then if we give certain powers to the executive, how is that going to work between the chiefs and councils in the community? It becomes a jurisdictional issue. All right. So I'm hoping that we can look at these options. Review of NAN's current electoral policy and process. Yeah. The next one is broad-based community consultation and engagement with NAN member First Nations to ensure legitimacy, relevance, and collective ownership of all proposed changes. Yeah, we want to include everybody in the review process. Yeah, that's what I would like to see too. Be it further resolved that selected qualified entities shall deliver a comprehensive final report with findings, analysis, and recommendations. It's going to be a good document, and it's going to have some information in terms of options, considerations of how we're going to reorganize ourselves. Yeah. Proposed governance models, including traditional, contemporary frameworks. Okay. And drafts of enabling policies, organizational frameworks, implementation strategies, formal presentation to a NAN Chiefs Committee on Governance, and also a Chiefs and Assembly for review and decision making.
at that time. Further be it resolved that NAN Executive Council shall ensure that NAN, Dizek Youth Council, Elders Council, and Women's Council be engaged in the review process. Be it further resolved that the review shall be conducted within the reasonable time frame and budget. Yeah, that's another thing, yeah. The time frame and the budget. And the amount of work, well, it always dictates the amount of funding that's been allocated for the work, you know. We can't seem to, do everything, can't seem to do everything that we wanted to do. It's because of funding limitations, and also the role, the scope of work on the consultant. Finally, be it resolved that non-chiefs in assembly affirm their collective commitment to strengthening NAN's sovereignty, transparency, effectiveness by restructuring its governance foundation to reflect the sacred laws, rights, and aspirations of Treaty 9 and Ontario portion of Treaty number 5 nations. So we're going to include Treaty 9 territory and some parts of Treaty number 5 First Nations. So that's the resolution. That's the resolution, and I hope that the work has started, which is good. The work has started, and I don't know what's the time frame on the work. Maybe Gary can highlight the work plan. Yeah.
I get Chief Obas for talking about the resolution that he seconded last year. Next, we'd like to call up Ogimakwe Constant. Oh, okay. Sorry. I guess there was a question about the timeline. The plan called for 6 months in the RFP for the timeline. So 4 months for a interim report and 6 months for a final report. And the plan is to present the final report at Kiwewin in August.
Miigwech, Gary. And miigwech to Chief Wabas, anin makwashkishgon indigenous cause, nindogi makwe, matagami aki nadojaba, boju and dinaway maginidug. I'm at the age where I need glasses now anytime I read, so I'm still adjusting if I hit the microphone. So thank you to Chief Wabas for doing a really thorough backgrounder, I guess, by reading out the resolution. I didn't anticipate you would do that, so some of what I'm going to say is a bit repetitive, and then I'll welcome Chief Sherry to come up to introduce the group that are going to be coming up after. So at the May 2025 Special Chiefs Assembly, the NAN Chiefs passed the resolution as Chief Wabas went over the comprehensive review of NAN governance and management structure and the development of sovereign and incorporated entities. The resolution affirmed that NAN governance must be guided by foundational Indigenous principles and legal instruments, including the Royal Proclamation of 1763, the NAN Declaration of 1977, the spirit and intent of Treaty 5 and 9, Section 35, UNDRIP, the inherent right to self-government, and Chiefs' resolutions. The Chiefs also identified the need to reconcile tensions between Canadian corporation structures and the political bodies that must uphold First Nation laws and sovereignty. After an RFP process, the NAN Governance and Finance Committee and the NAN executive rather, have selected 3 PACEs, a team of Indigenous and allied legal professionals to conduct the review. The team's senior advisor is Professor John Burrows. I believe some of the NAN staff handed out some of the items that they'll be reviewing, which I think also list who their team is. If you want to look along, you're more than welcome to do that. A leading Anishinaabe scholar, so we're very fortunate to be working with Professor John Burrows. The managing lawyer, Simon Owen, worked in NAN communities for several years before moving to the Indigenous Law Research Unit at the University of Victoria. Sheldon Falk is a business lawyer specializing in nonprofit governance. The team will work in close collaboration with the committee and members of the NAN Advisory Council. There will be a preliminary report and a final report for the Kiwewin conference held in August. There will be at least 2 rounds of in-person engagement. The review will uphold the principles of OCAP, so ownership, control, access, and possession. Simon Owen and some members of his team are here today for a more detailed presentation on the review, and Simon is available to arrange interviews with chiefs and others. And did you want to come up and say a few words? So I'll ask Chief Taylor to come up and say a few words as well before Simon comes up. So Miigwech.
Miigwech, Ogamakwe, Constant. Ogamakwe, Sherry Taylor, Ganugameen First Nation. I sit on the Governance Committee, Finance Committee alongside other chiefs. I'm here to introduce the the group that is going to be taking on the work to kind of, look at okay. That's been tasked to oversee the evaluation assessment of NAN. And I know that's not an easy task. When we did the interviews, the RFP process was in place, and then we did the interviews as part of our duties on the governance committee. It was a really rigorous, and it was a really, it was a long interview process. I think that we included a lot of tough questions in the interview because we wanted to ensure that our NAN communities, everything that they have said during our discussions here with the during our assemblies, that they were going to be there within the capacity of the interview to ensure that we were going to choose the right group to move ahead and do this special work that's needed. And I believe that we did do our due diligence, and we do have 3 PACEs. They are doing the work now. And I think the next step that I've heard from them, we've had a meeting with them on a little update before this meeting, and that they need to engage with the chiefs. And I believe an email has gone out to get the chiefs to do an interview, to take part in those questions, because this comes from you, comes from all of us here at our table. It's important for us to get this work done. So I encourage you to reach out to Simon and set up a time to do this interview. And perhaps maybe there's another way to do it besides these long questions that he interview process that he has in mind. There could be a different way to do it. But this is how far we've come so far, and I believe that you'll listen to the update from Simon. And at this time, I'd just like to take the time to introduce him. His name is Simon Howell? Owen. We're giving him all kinds of names here. Sorry, Simon. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Chief Taylor and Chief Constance and Chief Wabas and Gary. And everybody here. It's already been a day full of learning for us and our team. Besides myself, who's here today, I'd like to introduce Caitlin Beal and Lisbeth Hay Turner. They can say a few words about themselves. But who you see here is just half of the team who's been engaged to do this very important work. Professor Boros, you may know, who is not from NAN territory, but he's a esteemed and very accomplished Anishinaabe scholar, keeping us on track in terms of the work that we're doing. Mr. Falk is a lawyer who specializes in nonprofit corporate governance. So he's undertaking the corporate side of the review. And all the research analysts who are working on this have graduated from the dual degree program, the degree program in Canadian common law and Indigenous laws that is run by the University of Victoria. So I say that as an acknowledgement of the qualifications and skills that this team brings, but also the humility that we need to bring to this work. We are not experts in the laws that are going to guide your governance, that is always have and will continue. Our role is to listen and learn and bring the knowledge together in a way that allows you to make the decisions that you need to make. So I know we don't have a lot of time today. I'm going to do a short presentation on what we've done so far and where we're going. I do want to acknowledge the advisory councils as well. The Elders Council, whom we met with at the end of February, the Women's Council, who I'm hoping we can meet with soon, and the Oskatasak Youth Council, who we met with today and had so much fun that I spilled soup on myself. So I really am grateful for the leadership of these councils and also of the NAN Executive Council and staff who we've also had the chance to meet with. As you'll hear, this work is impossible. It's very ambitious work, and it can't be done by this team alone. It will be done in collaboration with the leaders of this nation who are here. And so I hope that we can provide the opportunities you need to engage with us however it works. So I'll just ask Elizabeth and Caitlin to introduce themselves.
Hi, Squale. My name is Caitlin. The name my grandparents passed down to me is Tough Pequawit. And I'm Coast Salish. I was raised on Penelakit, but I'm a registered Sartlip community member in Victoria. As Simon mentioned, I went to law school at UVic, and I currently work for my nation in the referrals department. So I have a bit of experience with governance and negotiating with provincial and federal governments in BC. Yeah, I'll pass it to Elizabeth. Thank you for having us here, and thank you to the people that have done the interviews with us and taken the time to sit with us. So Heitzapka, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisbeth. I'm a member of Thessalon First Nation, which is a small community just outside of Sault Ste. Marie, so a member of the Anishinaabe Nation. Echoing what Simon and Caitlin have said, you know, I'm so honored that you have entrusted us to do this work, and you have our word that we will do it in a good way. We had the chance to sit with the youth at lunch, and you know, I have to raise my hands to you all, because if that is the future is good and it's solid, and you know, I have full confidence that it's a bright one for NAN. And the chief was not kidding. It was a very tough process, so I'm really happy to be here and to be part of this process. Miigwech.
Okay, I'm going to do the international sign of switching slides. Great, thanks. So this is a very kind of sparse timeline of the sprint, really. We got started in mid-January, and I'll go into some of the background research that we've done. We've had some initial really good meetings. we've sketched out and brought forward some of the written work that needs to be taken into consideration. When we met with the Elders Council, as if we needed a reminder, but it's important to know that the laws of NAN are not written down necessarily. They are lived, they are practiced, they are being recovered and rehabilitated and revitalized. So I won't bury the fact that when we get to the end of this process, we're not going to have a written finished product of the laws that will govern you. What I hope we have is some good resources and pathways for you to chart your next steps. And I just want to reflect on the words that the Grand Chief shared about his hopes for the review, which I think are probably shared by most people here, to restore credibility, to revitalize the original mandate, to reconnect with the people. And from those, that's where the reorganization, the restructuring of this organization will take place. So it's not an off-the-shelf, here's a new kind of governance model. When you were debating this resolution last May, of course I wasn't here, but I had the opportunity to review the recording and notice how carefully every phrase of that resolution was considered. So when we're taking our orders and we're putting this work into practice, we are paying attention to every phrase of that resolution. And I heard, among many other things, that you didn't want some sort of cookie cutter consultancy to do this work. I mean, we're sweet, but we're certainly not cookie cut. So I hope that we can do justice to the very ambitious timeline and scope of the work. Both the Elders Council and the Youth Council have gently questioned how we're going to be able to do it in a comprehensive way, and that's a really good question. And like I said, we certainly can't do it alone. I'll show you what we've been looking at. We're going to be asking for your assistance and your guidance all the way through, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual meetings, which we're happy to do at your schedule, at your convenience, or whether it's any other method of email exchanges or phone calls or surveys. We can certainly consider any number of ways to make sure that your leadership and your knowledge is kept central through this process. So we're in the midst of engagement round number 1. We've talked to about 15 members of the NAN organizational leadership team, the Grand Chief, the Deputy Grand Chiefs, the CEO, some of the department heads, some of the executive assistants and policy analysts, and one ED from a tribal council, and some elders and former Grand Chiefs. We need to speak to the chiefs. The plan is to keep going with that engagement. As we analyze the findings, we bring that together, we start to sketch out preliminary recommendations, and we prepare a report for the Governance and Finance Committee for mid-May. We work through the feedback on that in June, and we also have a round of engagement that does that very important work of consultation, of workshopping together. So we're hoping that once the preliminary report is drafted, that we can bring that back for that round of more group-based sharing, working through, sketching out and bringing to light the wisdom that you have, and then bring that into the final report and presentation at Kiwewan. Can we have the next slide, please? So I won't spend too much time here, but part of the background work that the chiefs have asked us to do is look at all these resources, look at what's out there, look at what's been published, but make sure that it's done responsibly and that we're not just kind of picking from here and there. This is where Dr. Burrows' guidance is really helpful. But also as well, we're trying to stay transparent as we go. We've looked at about 30 resources so far, everything from dissertations and books. I mean, there's been a lot written on the treaties. There's been a lot that's been put together by NAN yourselves over the years. We're going to be looking at the Anishinaabe, the Sinanu, and the Mushkegewuk principles of good governance. Again, they're not all written down, but there is quite a bit of literature out there. We're going to be looking at Indigenous perspectives on institutional governance, or how organizations can be run in ways that perhaps better reflect those values than the corporate ones that are the expectations of non-Indigenous Canadian organizations. We're going to make sure that we center the treaty and the ways in which the treaty is understood and being upheld. We've been asked to look at the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. There's a lot that's been written about it. There's a lot of uncertainty still on how it can be a pillar of governance. But certainly, when we talk about the inherent and sovereign right and responsibility of Indigenous peoples to organize themselves and govern themselves in the ways in which they need and desire to do, that is a important international legal instrument that offers evidence and offers support for doing that in ways that don't have to conform, that don't need to conform to the expectations of the provincial and federal crown. And we're going to be considering those Aboriginal legal cases and principles that are starting to offer some more recognition of self-governance as an Aboriginal right. We're not all the way there yet, but we're certainly going to pay attention to whatever is useful to support the decisions that you're making. Next slide. As well as a broad literature review, we've asked Gary and his team to provide the many, I mean, there's been so many resolutions passed, over 6,000 to date over NAN's history. And we're certainly not able to look through all of those. The Elders Council has reminded us that that might not be the best use of our time anyway. We've looked at over 100 key resolutions that express NAN's corporate and political identity, position on treaties, and the major decisions. We'll continue to do that. As the Grand Chief mentioned this morning as well, the NAN Declaration is foundational, but it seems to have lost some prominence when we've been talking to people. It is not as central perhaps as it could be in the way that the mandate is lived out in the decisions that you make. We're going to be obviously looking at the corporate documents. We're going to be assessing and asking whether and how the corporate structure allows the sovereign entity, the living governing body that NAN is, to do its work, or whether it seems that the corporate structure is actually the master instead of the servant. And then we're going to be looking at some of the many publications, policies, and other documents that you've put out over the years. There are many that we have yet to look at, and I'm going to be definitely asking Luke, wherever he is. There he is. Hi, Luke. And others to highlight some of the statements that you've made over the years, some of the really good work that's been done that may have to be brought back into focus. We don't have time to reinvent the wheels that are already there, but that might not be on the bus in the right way. So we have a quite long list of the statements and the manifestos, the declarations that have been put out over the years. Some of those might not be relevant anymore, but many still are. They just may have been lost in the shuffle, in all the work and all the very good work. But sometimes it's hard to keep things in focus when you're just trying to respond to the needs of your communities, as we've heard. That's your work. So I won't spend too much time on this slide. This just tells you what we're doing and what we mean to do, which is really trying to give you the best opportunity within your busy schedules to meet with us. We have a rather intimidating list of questions which we can throw out and just talk about what you need to talk about. The important job for us is providing that space and giving some structure so that your experience can be brought to bear on the work. Next slide. So speaking of that long list of questions, these are some of the areas that we've been interested in exploring when we're speaking to the experts and the leaders. We've been asked to query the foundations, the fundamental principles, NAN's core functions. NAN has grown, and in some ways, that growth also has been both necessary and painful, and has maybe made it difficult to keep focus on the mandate that the chiefs need to bring to this organization. Your statements, unity, strength, success, unity in an organization of this size, of this diversity, with 49 members, with 7+ tribal councils and other unaffiliated nations, with multiple language groups. It's a challenge, but as we've heard today, there's I think a core understanding that there are many things that cross those boundaries that unite NAN, both the continued predations of the Ontario and federal governments. Whether it was in the 70s or whether it's today, it may be the same kind of attempt to profit from, to extract from, and to act as the sovereign in your territories in ways that don't follow your laws, your protocols, and your continuing sovereignty. So the reasons for unity may still be strong, but the ways in which to maintain it, which is what we're focusing on, may need to be brought back. So we're going to be looking at organization and communication. We've been talking to many of the leaders in the organization, the department heads, those who do who put your directions, your resolutions, your needs into practice every day. The many departments, the way in which communication needs to be maintained across all these departments, across all these different organizations, multi-nation organizations. Your work is too important for you to be fighting over the same resources or not communicating when you're trying to do the same thing ultimately. And we're going to be looking at corporate structure, obviously the members, the ones who right now, the chiefs, are the ones who put the executive council into place, and the executive council and the organization responds to you. NAN's role as a governing body, as a governing entity, in supporting the legal, the sovereign lawmaking rights and responsibilities of the communities. What better job it might be able to do in offering a supportive, if not lawmaking, then at least a supportive role in the laws that you need to be putting back into place and developing. And then NAN's role as an advocate, that's a core part of your mandate. Speaking that unity outwards, maintaining that unity inwards and speaking that unity outwards, because as you know and have experienced, every little chance to divide will be taken by those who seek to divide. We're going to be looking how decisions and conflicts are dealt with at that organizational level, with growing pains, with the changes, with the pressures that COVID has brought and other challenges have brought. Those ways in which decisions are made and conflicts are resolved are so important. So we're going to be developing options, looking at ways in which you can better put your knowledge and your ways into practice. As Chief Wabas mentioned, part of our mandate is looking at selection and representative effectiveness of leaders. And then we always ask about the challenges and opportunities that you see. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to end here. But this really is your teaser for what we're working on for a report. We've been told, NAN has this amazing history, this amazing origin story, and these continuing living leaders and who perhaps people don't know enough about why NAN is, what NAN really means and has meant these past 50 years plus. So we're going to start with just an articulation of those foundations, that history, and how the structure has evolved over time. Looking at those legal, political, and financial pillars. Obviously, the financial one is challenging, and we understand that. It's hard to exercise sovereignty without that economic base, and that's part of the ongoing work of maintaining and advancing sovereign decision-making over the territories, with all the communities of humans and non-humans on the territories. We're going to be diagnosing the tensions. We've heard a lot of tensions already. There are no shortage of reasons why this review is happening at this time. So we're going to be paying attention to those. We're going to be in a responsible and gentle way that respects people's needs for confidentiality as necessary to raise those so that they can be seen constructively and dealt with constructively. The literature review, we're going to hopefully make that a very helpful and interesting review of the literature that's out there. Our plan is to look at some other organizations. We know that NAN is unique. We know that your needs and your governance structure is unique, but we're also going to pay attention to the many ways in which other Indigenous organizations, both on Turtle Island and perhaps beyond, have organized to express their sovereign governance. So this may include Grand Council Treaty 3, the Anishinaabeg Nation, MKO. We were based in BC, so we might look at the Union of BC Indian Chiefs and other organizations like the Council of Yukon First Nations. We don't want to go too shallow. We don't have time for that, but it will be useful for you to consider some of the ways in which these organizations are developing or have developed governing structures. We're going to pick out some case studies, both of successes and challenges, to do a bit of that diagnostic work. Well, how is NAN working at its best? What does it look like when NAN's doing its best work? And when things break down, what went wrong? We're going to be bringing all those voices, and we hope we can have many voices that we can bring together Already there's an incredible convergence that we're noticing on both the challenges and the opportunities. So that's really heartening. Even with all the tensions and the difficulties that you're facing, there's a lot that is being shared that is common. And then we're going to be looking ahead to the next steps for our next round of engagement in the summer. So yeah, that's really it. We said how crucial it is to engage with the chiefs. We'd like to engage with tribal councils. Obviously, that may be in group work, but we're certainly open to sitting down with the tribal councils. We're looking ahead to doing some workshopping in the summer. And, we continue to be in your hands. We're committed to doing the best, most comprehensive work within the scope, within the budget, and bringing it to Kuwaiwan. Like I said, it's not going to be, there it is, the work is done. It's going to be, here it is, here's perhaps a new starting line for us, and we can move forward from here. Miigwech.
Miigwech for your presentation. I really appreciate the way that your team is working to try and bring Indigenous spirit to policy, so policy can no longer be a constraint, but a pathway towards action. That's my understanding of it. Are there any questions or comments from the delegates at this time for the team? Yes, please. What's his name? Please state your name and your First Nation, please.
Chief Wesley Catholic. So complicated. Very complicated. Mr. Owen, what we were trying to address was the interference of corporate policy with the First Nation leadership. And this all originated from what was occurring with the NAN executive and how HR policy, personnel policy were impacting the leader chosen by the chiefs in the assembly. That's what it was. And we talked about enhancing what we already have around the table, which is a consensus-based leadership system. And we wanted to try and highlight a clan-based governance system and incorporate that into the NAN policy framework, and at the same time separating out the corporate policy part, because that was impacting leadership. And essentially that's what it was. And I just wanted to note that that's what we were trying to achieve, so that the punishment of an executive getting into trouble would remain at the leadership level, not at the corporate level. And that's simply what it was. But I commend the work that's being done. It's excellent. But I'm hoping that at some point we will have a leadership model that's based more on how we originated as a people. And in some of the assemblies, I've quoted some of our old clan-based leadership systems and how they worked. So I just wanted to note that, and I have to leave soon. I have another call at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Miigwech, Chief.
Okay. Miigwech, Chief Wesley from Catholic. Are there any other questions or comments from the delegates? Yes, go ahead, and name and nation, please.
Yeah,
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Morris. I'm a proxy for Wagabone First Nation. You know, for those of us that do the research, you know what I learned that a nation has four attributes. You'll have a people, your land with the resources, your way of life, and your system of governance. Uh, before I go into the negative part, Solcott First Nations Health Authority have gone this route. They've tried to develop a governance system for their entity. I think they had four options, and from what I could read, all four options led back to the same point, that we're stuck within the Canadian framework. So maybe you can contact them and learn a little bit from them. For those of us, not him, but the other two, there's 9 communities that signed Treaty 9 at Kishinamexiv on July 5, 1929. 8 of us are within the NAN umbrella. Our mother community, KI, is outside. So whatever governance we had, yeah, a big part, KI not being there is not going to be captured, I guess. I guess we'll try to wing it on our own with the 8 communities, you know, with the rest of the 49 First Nations. But, you know, for me, I have a problem with calling NAN a nation. That's the basic problem that I have. Because I always look at NAN as my political organization that will do advocacy work for me in terms of my treaty rights. That's basically the way I look at NAN. To look at it as a nation that I will belong to, it's going to be quite a stretch for me. But my mind is always open. You know, if somebody can persuade me that this is the best way to go going forward into the future, you know, so be it, you know. But the problem does remain. Our mother communities outside what we're going to be doing here. I don't know how we can, I guess, find a way to entice KI to come back so that they can be part of this work. That's something that the non-executive will have to, or whoever's in charge of this thing, will have to take a good look at. But let's just take one thing of those 4 attributes, I say, of a nation, the people. I really don't understand the way the Muskegee work. I never have any dealings with them. Like we're actually we're 3 groupings, I think, within the NAN area. There's the Muskegee, there's the Ojibwe, and then there's, I don't know what they call us, where we are in that north central area, you know. So, you know, there are differences of how we do things, how we look at things, and how that is expected to all be reconciled going to one direction. All I can say is good luck to that work. It is going to take more than your timeline says. And the other thing I want to say is what we've been trying to grapple with in our community. if we understand treaty at all, the rights holders are our people, are us, our people. It's not NAN. It's us in our communities. And we can't reach our people. I could point to the obvious drug abuse, but it's more deeper than that. When we have a community meeting to discuss what you're talking about here, we'd be lucky if 30 people showed up. So we're talking about a people that we want to create a nation for. And their input is needed. I don't think it's sufficient to have a select group of chiefs and I don't know what you call them, knowledge keepers within the time that you have, to get all that is needed. We're going to be leaving our people behind, and I don't think that's a good scenario going forward. I'm just trying to say that I really have problems with this thing. But if our council and our people can be brought to that point where they understand that this is the way to go, then who am I to say we can't go there? But that work needs to be done, that community work. When the declaration was made, it was made as Grand Council Treaty 9. I know because I was one of those people in the background, clapping my hands. But that's what we were. We were doing it for Treaty 9. Now we've gone forward, to include Treaty 5, like our friend here. And I've always had problems with NAN representing 2 treaty areas. And now what are we going to do? Lump all of us together? I don't know if he's going to like it, That's up to him and his people to decide. So, I'm just saying these things, I want to lay them out in the open. I don't think your time frame is realistic. You might have something, but it's not going to be what needs to be done. But look at those things, what are the attributes of a nation? A nation is able to make treaty. When we were there, when our people were there, grandfathers were there, big to make July 5, 1929, they were a nation. At the time when there was no way to know. They came from Satsego, Berskin, One Kingfisher, Casablanca, Wagaborn. And they came there. And they arrived on July 4, 1929. So they could see the leaders sign Treaty 9 the next day. How did they know that? There was a system of governance that was at work. It's always been there. Since time immemorial, we've had that system. It's still with us. But we choose to use the imposed colonial system of governance, which I'm a part of as a council member. I don't like it, but that's what we have. So if we can make it understood that what is being planned here can be done with the 4 attributes of a nation. And remember, you're talking about 2 treaties here. Treaty 5 that Adam has, and Treaty 9 is what I have. So we're looking at 2 nations that we're expecting to get along. Me and Adam don't get along. I don't like his hockey team because they always beat me. But anyway, right, it's okay. But, there's two treaty areas we're looking at. And there are two systems of governance that all play there. And they're still here. We might work with the chief of council system, but when decisions need to be made, I know where it comes from.
Hmm.
And it's not from me. It comes from the elders, the people that talk to me. That's where decisions come from. So with that, I wish you well on your work. I know I tried to work with you one time, but it didn't work.
We go try. Yes, I remember. And thank you for your comments. Even though this is ambitious, I hear what you're saying, that we can't run ahead of the people. There's no point, and it will never work anyway to tell people who they are if they're not being the ones that are saying that. And I also agree with you that getting getting any finished product by August is not reasonable. The hope is to bring to this ongoing discussion the resources and some comparisons, some potential models to work with, to have those ongoing, whether it's talking with KI about future working together, whether it's that difficulties, but also histories of working together across treaties. It's getting away from being told what you need to do by another set of authorities, and returning to, even in a very complex, like the histories and the authorities in these territories they're not uniform, they're not simple, that they're very complex, but they're also strong. They've gone through a lot. So I guess I'm just saying, I hear you, and I trust that that strength is going to be reflected. And I know that this is not going to tell you what to do. This report is not intended to tell anybody what to do. So, pretty much.
I was gonna jump in, Mike. I was gonna say, you realize your two big bodyguards are Treaty 5, eh?
Yeah. Miguel, Mike, for raising your concerns. I really resonated with what you said about how it's going to be necessary to reconcile so many different views within Anishinaabe Aski Nation, and especially raising the concern of Anishinaabe Aski Nation and what that means, nationhood, as Nana Nation. Anyways, I'm going to continue forwards. Are there any further questions or comments from the delegates? Oh, I can't see. Oh, sorry. Gillespie. After this one?
Chief Cheryl St. Dennis, Brunswick House First Nation. So I'm one of the ones who motioned this. And Chief Wabass was seconded, and I just went over and asked him if he was already contacted about this. He said yes. I don't know if I missed the email or missed getting contacted on this. He said the interview didn't happen yet, but he was contacted. So I'm just wondering why.
That's a very good point. Gary?
Yeah, Chief, we have sent it out to our entire chiefs list that we send our information out. I think I've sent it twice now, and I can send another one out today. I think some of you received it. So
I'll check again.
yeah, maybe I'll send another one out tonight after, just so you have it fresh. And I know some of the chiefs said it got further down in their email after a while, so that's why I sent a second one about a week or two ago. I can send another one out tonight and let me know if by tomorrow morning you don't have it.
I'll make sure you have my right email. It's been changed a couple of times because of
Okay,
things,
and
but-
we'll keep up. I know Megan keeps up the chiefs list for us, and that's what we use. So if you don't receive it, please let me know, and we'll touch base with you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Miigwech, so we are going to be closing questions and comments for this so we can continue forwards. I know it's almost 5 o'clock. Hang in there, everybody. You can do it. So we're going to be pushing the Chiefs open forum to tomorrow. And then we're going to be finishing with the update on the second generation cutoff and Bill S2 presented by Luke Hunter and Mike Sherry. So please, Luke and Mike, come up to continue us forwards.
While Luke makes his way up, following this, you have an option of whether you want to go into your Chiefs forum. I know it's the end of the day, but there is that option to continue with an open forum. But we also would like, Grand Chief Fiddler would like to have a very quick in-camera session just to provide an update on some information that he shared this morning during his opening address, and also some information that was shared by Ontario Regional Chief just before lunch. So we'll have a very quick update on that. It needs to be in camera. Luke.
Thank you. Just a quick update on the issue of second generation cutoff. Actually, it's Bill S2, an act to amend the Indian Act, new registration entitlements. That's the exact title of the second generation cutoff. As in terms of the where is it at, the stages, it's currently at the second reading at the House of Commons. The Senate has completed their study, and they made some changes to the original Bill C-38, I believe. That draft legislation died when the House called the prorogation, so for election. So the Senate made changes to the reintroduce it and made significant changes. So I'll ask Mike later to highlight some of those significant changes. But as in terms of the current status, it is currently under the state, I guess, second reading, and second, it's been referred to a study, but the study hasn't moved. But there are 3 submissions. Mike's going to explain a little bit about that process, but as it currently stands, it hasn't made, the committee hasn't been formed. It hasn't considered hearings yet, but there is a mechanism for that. But it ultimately is up to the minister to move forward. But again, we have a lot of that information in the briefing note. But the key is Senate recommended under the Bill S2 that they're recommending to remove the second generation cutoff, to go for the single parent rule. So that's the key. And also the other key part is the liability on the Crown was removed, but we suspect that those will be brought back. Because if you remove those protections, there's the issue of financial resourcing. So that's the issue that the government is going to look at. They're not going to pass legislation forcing the government to pay for the huge cost, because you're talking about a lot of individuals eligible for new entitlements. So Mike is going to go through some of the legal aspects of the bill list and possibly potential processes under the House of Commons process. Mike?
Thanks, Luke, and thanks again. So the briefing note starts on page 27 of the chief's package. So the second generation cutoff issue, I think most people are pretty familiar with it. It goes back to 1985, Bill C-31, when the Indian Act status rules were changed because of the Charter of Rights. And these sections were put in then at that time, 6.1 and 6.2. So there's, in simple terms, if there's two generations with a non-status parent, that it creates a situation where the third generation will not be or might not be entitled to status. So this affects approximately 25% of the NAN population, so it's very significant, and it's a mathematical thing, so that once as this kicks in, it becomes the consequences become severe generation after generation. So it has been described by some people as the genocidal kind of math in terms of the status population. It is restricted to status or the right to register under the Indian Act. So under the previous, before the last election, there was a bill C-38 that Luke referred to that was in before Parliament, and it was quite restricted. It dealt with some historical enfranchisements. It also dealt with some fixing up of the modernizing some of the wording in the Indian Act in relation to some people, and it was pretty it was not very controversial. I remember talking about it at the previous NAN assembly. It seemed to be generally supported across the country. It had a relatively limited effect in terms of numbers of people. That was Bill C-38. But then it died on the order paper, as Luke said, because of the election. And then for reasons I'm not quite clear on, it reemerged as not a bill in Parliament, but as a bill from the Senate. So that's why it got transformed into S2, Senate Bill 2. And it originally had that restricted focus on enfranchisements and a couple of other things. But then apparently with the witnesses and the submissions that the committee heard were quite overwhelming in terms of people were saying from across the country that this second generation cutoff issue was urgent. It had to be dealt with right away as a priority. So really against the wishes of the Carney government, that the members on the Senate committee and the Senate as a whole basically transformed the bill, and so that it still has those enfranchisement provisions, but what they did to Bill S2 was they amended it, and so that it basically it creates a solution, or one solution for the second generation cutoff. It adopts the one parent rule, so that if a person has one parent who's entitled to status or has status, then that's enough. So that's one of the the solutions or proposals that is out there that has been identified to solve or deal with the second generation cutoff. So the Senate committee adopted that solution and put it into Bill S2. And also, as Luke indicated, they did a couple. They didn't put in a couple of things that the government supported. In the C-38, the previous bill, the government had a number of provisions that protected itself from liability for past discrimination, which is what they do. And they also, the government position was that the package should include changes to how First Nation membership codes are adopted, because they wanted to make it easier in terms of voting thresholds for a First Nation to adopt a membership code. The reasoning is that if there are more status people and therefore more members, that the existing thresholds to adopt a membership code would be difficult to meet. So therefore, the government view is that the membership code provisions should be changed at the same time. But this S2 is kind of it doesn't include the membership concept, and it also takes out the liability protection for the federal government, which is a good thing, of course, but it depends on your point of view, I suppose. So that's what Bill S2 went through the Senate. The federal government, through various pronouncements, made it pretty clear that they didn't support this approach, that the government perspective is that they would prefer to deal with the old business of Bill C-38 enfranchisements. And their position is that, yes, they recognize that the second generation cutoff is a significant, very significant issue. But what the government says, the feds, is that there should be a lengthy, elaborate consultation or engagement exercise with First Nations from across the country, and that it's premature to just adopt a solution like the Senate has done. So as far as I can tell, that remains their position, but oddly, as Luke indicated, the wheels of Parliament have kept grinding. So the bill S2 has passed first reading in the House, and it also passed second reading, which is in theory agreement in principle to the principles of the bill, and it's been referred to the standing committee. And a few groups have put in submissions, but we're not aware of any kind of a hearing schedule. So the government, the situation is quite strange because it's the bill S2 has been adopted in principle and it's going to committee, but the government, unless there's been a radical change, the government has indicated that they don't support the current version of the bill, and they want this 1 or 2 or 3 year long engagement with First Nations before acting on second generation cutoff. So that's where things stand. I mean, I noticed the ministers, the responsible minister, Iskis minister, is coming on Thursday, so that might be a chance for someone to ask a question about, you know, the government's current thinking on Bill S2. Yeah, and I also should say that there was before the election, the federal government made some very modest amounts of money available for engagement exercises, and first NAN did apply for the money, although I think the money came very late or maybe not even at all. I'm not quite sure about that. But in spite of that, NAN had quite an elaborate engagement exercise with based on the limited money or no money. And there were a couple of excellent technical reports put out last year that review the issue and review possible solutions. And just for information purposes, the solutions that have been talked about are possible solutions. One is the one parent rule, which is the one that you see in Bill S2. There's also treaty dissent from the original treaty group that's been mentioned. There's also something that's referred to as blood quantum, which is a very American First Nation concept, so not too familiar in Canada, but it's out there as an idea. And the other one is that First Nation control of status. So that would be, you know, the ideal, that First Nation, based on sovereignty and the right to self-determination, First Nations would control status. But certainly an objective, but it's not likely the federal government will be in favor of that one, because the federal government perspective, as I understand it, is that they think of status and registration as very much tied in with money and spending, because status triggers certain kinds of program spending, education, health, and other forms of spending that the federal government is obliged to do. And also it's related to tax exemption and things like that. So my understanding of the federal position is that in their mind, there's a very close connection between status and their spending liabilities. And they would almost certainly be opposed to First Nation control of it, because that would mean that they can't control program spending. So that's about the summary. Glad to take any questions or comments. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Just Luke reminded me of something, is that there was a resolution passed on this Anishinaabe Chiefs resolution that is referred to in the material. It's very recent, the last few months, and it indicates that the second generation is an absolute top priority for NAN to work on, Executive Council working with First Nations. And it also authorizes the setup of a task force. It's undefined, a task force with First Nation representation to work on this. So we've included, so the resolution authorizes all of that. So we're not, seeking or suggesting, at least from a technical point of view, another resolution, but we did put together a draft terms of reference for the second generation cutoff task force, which is attached to the briefing note, starting at page 31. So it's a very open-ended terms of reference. So it's not restricted to chiefs. It could be chiefs, technicians, tribal council representatives from across NAN, whoever's interested. Basically, just get this group together as soon as possible and start working on this high priority issue. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, miigwech, Mike and Luke, for your update on the second generation cutoff. So I don't see that there's any questions. It's an update on where things are at right now. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna ask for a motion to go in camera. And then after the in camera, if you want to continue on, we can go into the chief's forum. So I will need a mover for going in camera. And at that time, we'll need to turn off the live feed. Any government or industry or media will have to leave the room. So I need a mover to go into in camera. Okay. For the record.
I move that we go into an in-camera session.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Wabas. So if the technicians can confirm that it's off. Is there any opposition to going in camera? I see none. Okay, so the live feed is off. Can you confirm that?